Welcome and thank you again for attending Creative Fundraising Strategies for Arts Organizations. This is the second webinar in the Persist and Prosper series hosted by the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville, sponsored by the Tennessee Arts Commission. Before we begin, it's my pleasure to introduce the Tennessee Arts Commission Executive Director, Ann Pope, to share a little bit about the series.
Thank you, Jonathan, very much. And I'd like to thank you for everyone who has joined on the webinar today. This is the second webinar of Persist and Prosper, a 6-month series of webinars designed to help arts organizations weather the navigating challenging times that we're in. We've heard from many of you over the past few months about how difficult it is, how difficult it has been, and how and what are some things that would be helpful to navigate these challenging waters that we're in. We've designed this webinar series with you in mind, first gathering input from the local arts councils from across the state. Throughout the series, we will feature Tennessee arts leaders to share their challenges, successes, and innovative programming. We're honored to have today's panelists who will be introduced shortly. Each have been doing some really innovative and creative work for fundraising, and I am sure we'll all learn a lot. I want to thank Jill and Jonathan with the Arts and Business Council of Greater Nashville for hosting the series. Their expertise in designing and delivering webinars were an important part in making this project a reality. I hope everyone will be able to take some valuable ideas for creative fundraising. And I hope you'll sign up for the webinars that will be coming in this series. Again, thank you for being a part today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. And thank you to the Tennessee Arts Commission for sponsoring this series, where we bring together arts and cultural leaders from throughout the state to share what they've learned, managing the ongoing pandemic and the economic and social impacts of on arts and culture in communities throughout Tennessee. My name is Jonathan Harwell-Dye. I'm the program manager at the Arts and Business Council. We're an arts service organization based in Middle Tennessee that connects the arts and business sectors to create a thriving creative community. I'll share a link to our website in the chat for those who want to learn more. And it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce our panelists. So I'll start with Candace Lester. Candace, tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization you're with.
Absolutely. So my name's Candace Lester, and I'm with the Soulsville Foundation, and we are the administrative arm for the Stax Music Academy and the Stax Museum of American Soul Music. And a part of our Soulsville family is also the Soulsville Charter School. So there's a lot of soul happening, and we're in South Memphis on the original site of Stax Records. And I don't know how long, I don't want to go into it, but is that a good start on introductions?
That's a great start. Thank you, cool. Candace. Ekundayo, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Ekundayo Bandele. I'm with Hattiloo Theater in Memphis, Tennessee. We are a Black repertory theater with the mission to develop a Black theater that is accessible to, relevant to, and reflective of a multicultural community. We are 14 years old, and we produce around 6 to 8 plays a season.
Thank you so much. James, will you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm James McKissic, and I am with ArtsBuild. And ArtsBuild is a United Arts Fund. We've been around for 51 years, and our goal or our mission is to build community through the arts. We raise money and support arts organizations in Chattanooga. We do arts leadership programs, and we also facilitate arts education and arts experiences for children in Hamilton County schools. So thank you, and thanks to the Arts Commission and ABC Nashville for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, James. And Reggie, will you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your organization?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Reggie Law. I am the Executive Artistic Director at Oak Ridge Playhouse, a small community theater in Oak Ridge. We aren't a huge operation, but we're a powerful one, we like to think. We are in our 78th season consecutive, and we're one of the longest running community theaters in the Southeastern United States. We do typically 7 productions a year, and we are trying to keep it going this year, just like everybody else is. You know, so we have a main stage season and some children's productions as well, and do some outreach in education. So,
thank you, Reggie. Well, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions, everyone. We know how important it is for arts organizations to be able to replace lost earned revenue, and that's been a big problem this year. So I had a chance to speak with each of you about your organizations and what you were doing, and how you were approaching fundraising, and particularly fundraising events during the pandemic, using sort of what we talked about that your organization has done as sort of primary examples of creative fundraising. I'm going to have each of you share for about 5 minutes about the strategies that you've employed and what's worked well for you so far. I'll start with Reggie, since you ended the last one. We'll start with you.
sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You know, the whole pandemic thing hit just as we were about to finish our last season. We had one production left that we were not able to do, and we had just closed the production. So in a strange sense, the timing was good and that we didn't necessarily interrupt programming that was happening, but we were faced with the fact that we would have been going into our subscription drive for the following season. We were literally just like days from dropping information about that. So, you know, we couldn't, with the uncertainty, we decided not to move forward with that and figure out how we were going to get through the rest of the fiscal year. You know, we had a lot of questions about, well, what's going to happen to the Playhouse? What's going to happen? Are we going to survive this? And, you know, I one day said to a patron, I said, well, we need to just think of this not so much as the end of something. We have to think of it as an intermission. And we'll be back after the intermission is over. And somebody said, hey, you ought to put that on a t-shirt. So I thought, well, maybe that's what we can do, at least to commemorate the time. So we started off by doing a small fundraiser by designing a t-shirt that said, Oak Ridge Playhouse will be back after intermission, and selling that online. We have an online store through our website. And so we decided to sell it online because we, of course, couldn't have people come to the building and purchase and so forth. And I thought we'd have some success with it, but we ended up having an enormous success with it. With just a $25 t-shirt in a small community, we managed to raise, I think we're somewhere around $7,000 we've raised just from that t-shirt project. And what really worked about it for us was that it gave people an opportunity to feel like they were part of a history in a certain sense. That that through their small effort, they could help take part in something much bigger. And it allowed us to reach people far outside of Oak Ridge as well. People who have, you know, with the 78-year history, we've had a lot of people come through here over the years and have moved on to other locations, but still, you know, have fond memories of the Playhouse or believe in the Playhouse. And so they all wanted to jump on board and have their piece of the Playhouse with them wherever they were. So that's one of the reasons why I think it was such a success for us. We did it through, there's a company called Printful, which prints t-shirts on demand. So we didn't have to worry about the overhead of purchasing a bunch of shirts and wondering if they were going to sell. You know, they weren't printed until they were purchased. And they also drop ship directly to the patron. So we didn't have to worry about fulfillment. We didn't have to worry about having to bring people to the Playhouse because, you know, we were shut down. So through this company, everything was handled virtually online. And we didn't have to actually handle anything ourselves as far as the physical part of it. So that's kind of the first thing that we did. Do you want to go into the concert thing, or?
We can come back to that. We'll
okay.
come back to that. I'll go next to Candace. Tell us a little bit about Soulsville and what you've been able, how you've approached fundraising during the pandemic.
Sure. So we recently finished our first virtual campaign. We called it #MusicMustContinue. And the idea for the campaign actually came out of a staff meeting where our social media manager was kind of talking about what was happening in arts education for middle and high school students as we were transitioning to virtual. And then with us having to close our campus, the on-campus resources, even though we were able to transition to virtual programming, weren't going to be available because how many people, especially high school, middle school students, have a state-of-the-art studio in their living room? I'd love to have one, but I don't, and most of them didn't either. So as we thought through the messaging for the campaign, we knew that we wanted to talk about access to education and how that was impacting the arts. We knew that we wanted to kind of engage people in what it felt like when we were open and how we were carrying that into our new reality and our new normal through virtual programming and different ways of engaging both our students and the community around us. So on the other side of that, the actual technical fundraising side, this felt like a great opportunity to engage lapsed donors and to help new audience kind of fall in love with what we were doing at Stacks. At the end of the campaign, we rescreened our 2018 summer finale performance in partnership with the Overton Park Levitt Show. And so that one gave it a little bit of nostalgia for the donors who would remember going to that performance. They're always very energetic. They're outside. Overton Park is gorgeous. And it's just a really fun annual thing that we've looked forward to every year that we missed out on this summer. So in that campaign where our goal was to raise $50,000, we ended up raising $53,000. And for about half of that, we were able to partner with corporate partners to give $5,000 each, and that got us to $25,000. And a part of that partnership was creating communications toolkits for each partner that included a sample newsletter, social media posts, pictures, video, whatever we thought they might need to help leverage that campaign and connect us with new audiences. And that ended up being very successful because we got quite a few new donors through those corporate partners and their social media shares. And we engaged a number of our lapsed donors through the emails and the social media, because we did a lot of 30-second and 1-minute videos with our alumni. And they talked about what life has been like for them and kind of how Stacks helped them be more prepared for the next step in their life. So there were a lot of pieces to it, but the fundamentals of fundraising were definitely still true. It was just thinking about how to use them in a different way because you weren't able to physically be in front of people.
Thank you so much, Candace. James, tell us a little bit about what ArtsBuild has been doing to fundraise recently. I know you just had a big fundraiser. How did that go? And tell us a little bit more about how you put that together.
Yeah, so a big part of what we do is raising money for our annual campaign each year, like many organizations. And early in the year before the pandemic hit, we had come up with an idea of having donor cultivation events in our space, small parties in the evening where donors could, or board members could invite their friends. The board member would host the party and learn about ArtsBuild. There might be a musical performance, and then we would make a very clear ask at the end and invite those guests to become donors to our organization. Of course, you know, with COVID, we were not able to continue doing that. We were able to do 2 before the pandemic shut not only everything down, it shut our office down, our space and all. So as I've been really working and thinking through the work that we've done since COVID hit, I've kind of been using the metaphor of a remix. You know, we're doing the same program, we're honoring our mission, doing what we need to do, but we kind of have to remix the methods and the modes of doing it. So we came up with the idea of doing online donor cultivation events. And this past Saturday, we hosted an event with the Chattanooga chapter of the Links. And some of you will know the Links from your local towns. But it's a women's group, an African-American women's group that focuses on civic engagement and social activities and education and the arts. And we did a short 20-minute presentation to them, talked about ArtsBuild, shared what we were up to, but also painted the big picture of what the local arts sector was going through these past few months. We also had a musical guest who came on to the Zoom and performed. And then we ended it like we did the in-person events with a hard ask. And since we've hosted that event and closed it out, we have seen donations start to come in from that event. So we're pleased. We're gonna tweak some things about the model and the way that we do it. And we can talk about those later, but we're glad that we took an event that we typically had, remixed it for the digital age, and kind of, you know, pushed back at COVID and said we still can do the things that we need to do to make our organization successful.
Thank you so much, James. Ekundayo, could you talk a little bit about what the fundraising efforts you've been doing with Hattiloo?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the fundraising event that really typifies how Hattiloo Theater is embracing this moment was a 3-day event we did called a Zoomathon. So a Zoomathon is just like a radiothon or something like that. We did it for 3 days from 6 until 7:30, 6 p.m. to 7:30 each day. You know, people's attention spanned. We knew we couldn't do 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. So we thought that was a sweet spot right there. And what we did was we scattered a few performances. I think we had 3 performances scattered between each program. But more importantly, we had testimonials, testimonials from board members, from donors, and also we included some celebrities that Hattiloo has relationships with to kind of serve as a magnet to bring people on. Day 1, we had the Grammy-nominated soul singer Angie Stone, who was set to star in a musical of ours this past August. Then we had Eddie George, who we're working with next year, who was a running back for the Tennessee Titans. And actually, during the pandemic, was on Broadway in Chicago, I think it was. And then on the 3rd day, we had Harry Lennox, who has been involved in several Hattiloo productions. And you may know him best from The Matrix or Blacklist or some of those things, but he's actually a strong stage actor. And so they spoke about the importance of Hattiloo Theater on the national landscape. We asked them not to speak so much on the local landscape, of course, because they don't know Memphis. So we had some individuals who were trained at Hattiloo and had gone on and done other things, most notably Janine Farmer, who started acting at Hattiloo in our 2nd season and then left and got her master's in acting from the New School and made her Broadway debut, or off-Broadway debut as an understudy in Tony Stone last year. And so, and then, like I said, we had some performances, we had some live readings of some plays that we did, maybe 3 or 5 minutes each, and some musical things along those lines, and board members spoke, and we also had some donors speak. And so we asked each person who spoke or to perform, or who performed, to point people to the chat box where we kept putting in the link for them to donate, And it went quite well. At that time, right then, you know, we raised around $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000, and right now we're still getting money in. Lisa Allen, our managing director, got a check in today. There are people who don't feel comfortable giving, you know, online, and of course, with the mail, you can mail something in April and damn near get it in December. So we're still getting in things right now. But the Zoomathon really showed how Hattiloo was embracing the moment. And it showed how Hattiloo has changed lives and how we are continuing to change lives. So we feel that that was our best fundraising event, and one that really showed how we're going to be moving forward during the pandemic.
Fantastic. Oh, it looks like James has a question about the Zoomathon. Was it taped or did you do it live?
We did it live, and I think, Jonathan, you're going to talk about that a little bit later about filming something or going live. And I'll tell you, one of the things about going live, you know, that first day, we had a lot of issues, you know, some people dropping something, you know, people not showing up on screen, people forgetting to mute themselves. But we embraced it and said, you know what, guys, that's just like a actor on stage forgetting his or her line or their cue, or like in Hattiloo's first season, a wall falling down on the set. And that's kind of the beauty of live theater. And so we were able to recreate that through the Zoomathon.
Thank you so much. Reggie, let me come back to you to talk a little bit about the concert. Let's talk about that and how you approach doing that online.
Okay. You know, as we continue to try to figure out ways of raising funds, you know, we started thinking about, well, you know, programming is really what we do. So if there was a way to use that rather than having necessarily an event or something like, you know, that type of thing. So I thought, well, how do we make use of people's talents, but remain distanced? And, you know, we can't all get together and put a show on. So what do we do? And we explored some possibilities with Zoom and things like that. And I was just very worried about some of the technical issues, like he just mentioned, you know, that, you know, Zoom can bring about. So we decided that what we would try to do is to put together a online concert that was pre-recorded but edited together to feel like a live event, even though it wasn't. We didn't try to pretend that it was live. We just wanted to give it as much of that feel as we could. So I approached several of kind of our performers that people are well known to our audiences or favorites of our audiences, and said, "Hey, would you be interested and willing to, you know, perform a solo piece, because, you know, we can't get people to get together and sing together." And thought, well, you know, if I can get 10 or 12 performers to agree to do this, we could put together an hour or so. And so I approached about 25 people, and all but one said, yes, I'd love to do it, because everybody's wanting to have an outlet right now. So what we decided to do was treat the concert kind of like studio sessions, so that each person could sing individually. And we got to the point where we felt it was okay to have a couple of people in the building at one time, and although distanced and masked. So I had performers come in one by one to sing and be recorded, and with all the safety precautions and everything. The only people in the building were myself and the music director and the sound engineer. And we were all and the singer, him or herself. So we were all separated. We recorded it. I edited it and put together a package. And we did kind of a duel. It was a one night event. So it had a live feel to it. And it launched at 8 p.m. We launched it on Facebook and on YouTube at the same time. And then we had the chats going on both platforms, so people could engage and talk to each other, talk about what they were seeing and who they were seeing. And then also in that package, I reached out to some past performers at the Playhouse who have gone on to have careers in the arts from all varying levels, from being the host of the Magic Mike show in Las Vegas to being a Tony winner on Broadway. So we had a whole mix and range of people who gave testimonials about the Playhouse and why the Playhouse was important to keep going, what it meant to them in their lives, and then an appeal to leave donations. And so people were able to donate directly through Facebook, through our Facebook channel. And then the video itself, you know, contained links to go and donate. The YouTube, we kept pushing donations within the chat, and it was a really a very exciting evening. I mean, even more so than I thought it was going to be. And we ended up with about $15,000 in one night. And it was exciting. It was fun. People were really into it. And the other big thing it did for us, it demonstrated to me that people were willing to support online productions of some type. So,
Reggie, let me follow up because I know that there's a lot of people that have questions about platforms and the tools that you're using online. Yes. We had a lot of questions submitted about that. So you mentioned Facebook and YouTube. I know YouTube has this sort of live, like you can put a video up and then sort of premiere it at a certain time.
That's exactly what we did. Saying the same thing with Facebook. Both platforms you can do that.
When you were taking the donations, you took them through Facebook. What were did you use any other specific tools or anything?
Our website. We have a donation link on our website, so we used that. We also solicited some mail donations as well. So we basically gave everybody, we made everyone aware of all the different ways they could donate. Mm-hmm. They could choose their way. I mean, Oak Ridge is our audience is an older audience, so a lot of them aren't comfortable with donating money on computers and things like that. So we had to give them the opportunity to give in other ways, and it worked out well. I mean, some people even came and slipped a check under the door.
Fantastic. I like that there was any way they wanted to give, they could absolutely give. Yeah. Ekundayo, I want to come back to you a little bit and talk about the Zoomathon and ask you that same question. Were there any other tools besides Zoom, any online tools that you use specifically to make that happen?
Actually, no, that was it. I wish I would have been smart enough to know how to connect it to Facebook Live, but I didn't. The only thing was we had that direct link to our page where you can make a donation, so they didn't have to click anything but that link. But that was it. We didn't use a Cash App or Venmo or, again, I'm almost 50, so I'm still learning those things. So Zoom is making me young again. I mean, not Zoom, but the pandemic. And so our next one, I will be able to diversify the portals that people can use to give.
Absolutely. So, James, let me come back to you and ask you the similar question. What tools have you been using to do fundraising online, in person? What's that mix look like for you?
Well, so for the event, the donor cultivation event, we did, like everyone else mentioned, and put a direct link to our donation page in the chat on Zoom. But we've also right now, we've had a graphic online on Facebook and Instagram that we've boosted and paid to, to boost. And it has links to our direct fundraising page as well. And then for the past few weeks, I also have just been texting people to donate. So we had a very large welcome party. When I came to ArtsBuild, it was in January. So we had a welcome party and a lot of people came, and I've actually been going through that welcome party invite list lately and just saying, hey, how about supporting ArtsBuild? We're doing our annual campaign right now. We really are trying to diversify our donor pool, and here's the link to do that. And part of me felt like people were going to start blocking me, but they actually have said, yeah, I'll donate, or wait, hit me up Friday when I get paid. And the donations have started coming in. So, I mean, we're just doing whatever we can. Early in the year, we set the goal that we would grow our donor base, but also try to make our donor base look more like the population of Chattanooga. So that's what we've really been focusing on.
Thank you, James. Candace, I'll come back to you. You talked a little bit about your approach, and really you created toolkits for your donors and partnered with them. Can you talk a little bit about what you use to put those together? Are there any resources that might be of interest to people listening in today?
Sure. We kept it pretty simple. We created them using Google Docs so that the team could have access to it fairly simply. We put the photos, videos, and any other media resources that we wanted to share in a separate Google Drive folder for each partner, and just made it a private folder that we shared with them directly. And then just made a check-in calendar that I, put a notice to email this partner to remind them that their week is coming up next week, or just to make sure that we stay closely personally connected to our partners, because everybody's so busy right now. And with working from home, the routines are different, and the way that we manage our schedules are different. And then it's just nice to have the quote unquote face-to-face as many times as you can, especially with because it was a month-long campaign and every week had a different corporate sponsor. So that week we tried to be really sponsors to make sure that we weren't putting any additional work on them with the social media sharing and sending out additional newsletters, but that we were really able to get the most out of those networks that they had, and that they could share with their audiences that they were supporting Stacks Music Academy.
Thank you. That brings me to sort of a follow-up for you, Candace. One of the things you shared with me prior to this was, that the fundamentals of fundraising still apply. Yeah. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how you remind yourself of those fundamentals, especially in terms of this, and everything sort of changing, our normal routines changing.
Sure. The biggest thing is having, I call her my brainstorm buddy, but there's an organization here in Memphis called City Leadership. And she's the person who, when I get a new idea, we throw 30 minutes on the calendar and talk through things. And sometimes what we're talking through is just kind of rejecting the doubts that happen, where is it okay for us to be asking for money right now because we are not serving food or providing shelter? And then remembering that our organization is in existence, and our mission and our vision is important, because while it's not food or shelter, it is a need for a lot of different reasons, especially for the students we serve. So validating that part. And then the next part about the fundamentals piece is remembering that we're going through COVID-19, we're not forever in it. And while it will look different on the other side, the strategic plans that we've done and the messaging and all of the other pieces that were put in place to make the business continue to operate are still true, because human behavior is still human behavior. So we're going to do what we've always done. And while we can't predict an event that will happen, we can certainly predict what reactions to it will be. And I think that's the simplest part, is kind of checking in with myself and rejecting my own panic, and remembering that as consistent and solid as I can be is another way that we can reassure our community that we were here before, we're here now, and then we'll continue to be here for you afterwards. So I hope that answers the question. But
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'm gonna go to Reggie. I wanted you to talk about the same thing. I know you shared a little bit about that the need hasn't changed. So talk a little bit about how you justify fundraising during the pandemic and to your donors, and how you frame that need and understand it.
Basically, it's we try to whatever it is we do, or whatever we try to come up with, we try to make sure that it's more than just asking for money. We try that they receive something in return, whether it's an item or whether it's programming. We want to make sure that we can still continue to give some kind of service that we normally would be giving, to not only show that the organization is still healthy, but also that their support is going toward our longevity. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Let me go back to James now. I want to ask you a little bit about some creativity in terms of donors. Like, how have you been creative in recognizing donors, getting donors excited about these sort of virtual events? Have you had any pushback from donors about attending virtual events? Like, how are you being creative in donor engagement with this fundraising?
Well, we really haven't had any pushback. I think that I've seen two camps going on. Like, one camp is like, oh, people are so tired of these Zooms and these virtual meetings and events. But then I also see people who kind of thrive in that environment. So some people enjoy it. They like the flexibility of it, you know, like I'm looking right now at my kitchen as I talk to you. So it can work out, you know, just it's crazy. But we really have, we came up with a list of like people and organizations that we wanted to connect to. So, and we've been working that list. Between now and the end of the year, we will be doing our presentation for our Rotary Club, for some of our local Kiwanis clubs, for the staff of our chamber, but also some of the chamber's neighborhood groups as well. We're going to be doing it during Startup Week here in Chattanooga to talk to entrepreneurs and those people who are starting new companies that will grow and, you know, will be our donors one day. So we really have just reached out to any groups that that we see have a lot of things going on, that do regular meetings, and they're looking for entertaining, new, engaging content with the arts. And, you know, I always remind people, like earlier you were saying, how do you justify that you're raising money for the arts? Every time I talk, I always remind people that the arts are really the only thing that's been keeping us sane, you know? If you didn't have the TV shows, the novels, the paintings that you look at in your house, if you weren't able to experience the arts, we all probably would have lost our minds by now. So the arts are critical. They're sustaining us. They keep us healthy and happy. They benefit our communities. And they are just as important as food and shelter. And we have to continue to remind people that.
Thank you so much, James. Ekundayo, can you talk a little bit about how you have engaged donors and any creative strategies around donor engagement and, you know, understanding and justifying fundraising during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. I want to applaud James and what he said, because I think he hit the nail on the head that, you know, the arts are just as important as, you know, food, water, clothing, and those things. And on that point, you know, Jonathan, one of the words you use, you know, was how do we keep our donors excited? All right. Well, you know, I don't really think I can keep a donor excited in this moment. I don't think there's anything exciting that I can do, especially virtually, that can make someone want to dress up and put on cologne or put on a dress and sit in front of the computer and be like, oh my God, I can't wait for this, right? And so more than excitement, I'm actually leaning on theater being essential. And especially with us being a Black theater right now, there's just so much pain, fear, angst in the Black community. It's like every week we see an innocent Black person shot by people who are supposed to be protecting us. And so if someone is crawling through our window or what have you, who do we call? That type of pain, that type of terror that we're living in needs voice. And with our mission, that is exactly what we do. We give voice. And for those individuals who don't know how to express that terror that they're going through, it is an artist that helps them with that. It is an artist that writes something, that sings something, that plays something, that paints something, that moves in such a way that a person can identify with and say, ah, that's it. And it's not only Black people, it's even white people. I mean, George Floyd just opened people's eyes to what African Americans have been going through for 400 years. And now there's that empathy that is growing, and there's that sympathy that is growing. And so when I approach a donor, it's not necessarily about excitement, it's about this moment. It is about this moment that the world is witnessing, and that it is our responsibility as a Black theater to give voice to that, to give story to that. And so honestly, when I approach a donor, it isn't, hey, we're about to do this show, or we got, you know, Harry Lennox. It is about, this is an important moment, specifically for our mission, being a Black theater, to share with you and share with others the temperature in these cultural communities that can be taken across the nation.
Thank you.
If I can respond to what X said, that made me think about something, and I love the way that you articulated how and why Hattiloo is still essential. And that kind of takes it back to the fundraising essentials piece that you asked earlier, Jonathan. It's not necessarily about keeping donors excited. And as a fundraiser, and I think all of you have maybe heard it at least once or twice, that we sell a feeling, right? And maybe before now that was undervalued, but right now the feeling that we're selling is community and hope and the opportunity to be a part of something that is bigger than you, but in a very positive way. Because right now we're a part of something that's bigger than us and we don't have control over it. So that kind of creates anxiety. But as fundraisers, what we have the opportunity to do is connect people to something that's hopeful and exciting, and that gives them a sense of control where they don't really have any. And that's what I was getting from what you were saying, Ek, a lot, is that, hey, this is your chance to plug in, and this is your chance to be a part of a group of people who see the importance of that and to keep it going. So that message was very powerful. And I think if we all think of it that way, we can create similar messages for our organizations that help people get immediately to like why exactly fundraising for the arts is so important, and for your organization in particular.
Thank you, Candace. And thank you both for, I think you really have hit the nail on the head about how important and essential this work can be for communities that have not had resources or have been disproportionately affected by a lot of systemic problems in our society. And I think that it's really important for us all to remember how essential the arts are in giving that voice and creating that place where people can express those ideas. And I want to kind of shift for a second. I want to go to ask a little bit. I'm going to ask Reggie to talk a little bit about how that looks for his organization and his community. Talk a little bit about the strategies that you focus on in Oak Ridge specifically.
Looks and what, could you expand on that a little bit for me?
Well, in the community of Oak Ridge, like talk about what do you feel like is unique in Oak Ridge with the Playhouse and your fundraising strategies there?
One of our primary approaches is to our patrons in Oak Ridge is that here's a very small community, 30,000 people. And if you know the history of Oak Ridge, or if you don't, the town of Oak Ridge was built 78 years ago for the sole purpose of building a component of the atom bomb. That's why Oak Ridge is even here. So you had all these scientists come from all these other communities, these larger cities and things, to this small town that was just built out of nothing in Tennessee. And it was a fairly much a gated community. It was closed. You had to have military clearance to go in and out of town back in the 40s. And because of that, they needed culture here. And so here's a town this size that has sustained over these 70 years a theater, a ballet company, its own symphony. So it's a very arts-minded community. And so it's very unique in a community this size, especially 20 minutes from Knoxville. That we the Oak Ridge is kind of a center of arts within this little area here, and that uniqueness is what drives our audiences, and it's something special that they have, and so our approach has always been help keep this special thing here, and going back to what Candace was saying about being a part of a community, we really drive the community effort a lot here. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think the t-shirt thing went so well for us, because everyone was able to be a part of the community and something much larger by simply buying and wearing a shirt.
Thank you so much, Reggie. I think it's essential to be a part of a community for any organization, that you're not just serving a community, that you be a part of that community. So thank you for that. And I think that what I want to do now is, it looks like we've got about 15 minutes left. So I want to open it up for anyone to ask questions through the chat. Feel free to put questions in there, and I'll try to go through and pose some of those to our panelists. While people are putting questions in the chat, I'm going to open this up, and I'll start with you, James. But what do you see fundraising? How is fundraising going to be different when we get sort of through the pandemic and what we're going through now? What do you see as being changes that are going to be permanent?
One thing that I think a lot about is a lot of fundraising has been in the form of galas and large events. And I really question when we'll be able to do those types of things again. I love the question that you asked Reggie, though, about what makes Oak Ridge, different when it comes to fundraising. And in relation to this question, I would say that in Chattanooga, one thing that makes us different is we are celebrated around the country for our outdoor spaces and our outdoor activities. And I think that, as I talked about the remix earlier, that the arts community and the arts sector is going to have to maybe partner with some of our outdoor enthusiasts and outdoor organizations to figure out how to move large group events and fundraisers and those types of events that bring people together into outdoor spaces. So that's what I've been thinking a lot about when it relates to that.
Thank you so much, James. Candace, I'm going to ask you, you touched on this a little bit earlier about, you mentioned strategic planning, and I'm wondering sort of how are you planning for the future in terms of fundraising? Like, what are you thinking about? What's your organization thinking about? Like, how are you doing that, and sort of like what tools are you using? And then what do you think it's going to look like?
Sure. It's a mix of kind of like what I said before, is focusing on where we think we'll be as an organization and trying to stay consistent. And then talking to other people who are thinking about their future and planning and trying to see what the landscape will look like for them, and really leveraging the virtual fundraising and Zoom piece as an opportunity to do what arts organizations do best, and that's share our art in a way that we haven't been able to before. So now we can hang out with people in their living room on their own time with pre-recorded showings. We can use social media more dynamically. So I think as we move forward, it's focusing on virtual fundraisers. And if we do get together in person, making sure that it's outdoors and very limited, but we don't see doing that until at the very least next year. And hopefully by next summer, we'll be able to do some smaller events, kind of what James was saying, and really leveraging the outdoor spaces that Memphis has. But we'll see. So a lot of it is being comfortable with virtual fundraising and getting creative around that and building one-on-one relationships with your donors as you can.
Yeah, I've noticed a theme with everyone, that those relationships with their donors have been key to making these events work, whether
Absolutely.
that's, yeah. Absolutely. We do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to pose this, and if anyone wants to answer it on the panel, feel free to jump in. But what is your best advice for engaging a passive community and those who view the expansion of culture in a small town as a threat to their comfort zone?
All right, I'll jump in. That's a good
question.
I know. I think that's what we're going through nationally, is various communities feeling threatened that their culture is being, trampled on or marginalized. I think, so what we do at Hattiloo is try to make certain to show people where they fit in the narrative. Be you white, LGBTQ, a senior, a millennial, where do you fit in the stories that we tell? And we do that through panel discussions, we do film screenings, and those panel discussions especially are ways for people to ask those questions. That what about me question, that am I being supplanted question. And if you're genuinely doing your work to be inclusive, then you will have a response for that person and be able to show them a mirror through your work in which they can see themselves. Now, they may not see their, their whole self the way that they're typically used to. They may see a part of their self or a part of their culture, but then they're beginning to understand that they're actually more expansive being part of many groups, as opposed to being that microcosmic group that they have grown accustomed to.
Thank you. We have one more question. We have a couple of questions coming through. One is, my organization, Arts Inside, offered art classes to incarcerated persons in the local jail. Right now, the jail is closed to volunteers and has been for months. They're not interested in working with us to do Zoom lessons. How do organizations keep their energy up when they aren't able to do the things that give them purpose?
I love that question, and I think it brings to mind for me something that I have to remind myself of a lot is, we talk a lot about the digital world, but sometimes we just have to go analog. If you're able to mail in a packet to the inmates that has information and then they mail it back to you, I mean, we might have to do some of the old things. We've gotten so much energy from letters, and I've been doing handwritten notes and cards for months, phone calls, the old ways. People now, I love going to my mailbox. I mean, I don't like getting the bills, but then when something else comes, I'm excited about that. When I get that little notification that Amazon is on its way to deliver a package, I'm excited. So use all of the methods, brainstorm, go back to some of the old ways. We made a goal at ArtsBuild this year to touch each of our donors 10 times, and we're doing it through all of those methods because it is so much about building those relationships like everyone has mentioned.
Thank you, James. So it looks like we've got about 7 minutes left. I want to give all the panelists a chance to share sort of a final thought, 30 seconds, a minute and a half. But just what is your advice? The title of this is Creative Fundraising Strategies for Arts Organizations. So what's your advice, your tips, your best wisdom to share in terms of creative fundraising strategies now and into the future? And I'll start with you, Candace. What are your final thoughts?
Sure. There's one question in there to speak to how your creativity plays into the business side, risk management, strategic planning, budget planning, et cetera. And I think that's the perfect question for my final thought is your budget is your roadmap. So the reason fundraising feels so urgent is because we're making sure we can balance our budgets, right? So being very specific about what your campaign is fundraising for and making sure that you're open and transparent about it, but finding a way to make that line item, I'm trying to find a better word, exciting and attractive. So we said we were fundraising to help cover the gap between tuition and programming, but the way that we presented it to our donors, which was also true, we were providing needs-based scholarships, and we were helping to support programming for students who weren't receiving music education due to the pandemic. So that all of the things are the same, and there's no difference in them, but it's the phrasing of that budget item that you're fundraising for to make other people interested in it and then really understand why it's super important.
Thank you so much, Candace. Reggie, I'm going to ask you next the same question, but I'm also going to throw in, so in the chat, Joy says that I should ask you about the Oak Ridge Playhouse, Alabama story.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take too much time because I know you're limited, but I'll talk about Alabama story first. As I mentioned earlier, the concert kind of led us to determine that audiences were willing to see virtual things, and so again, going back to what we do is presenting shows is what we do, and people had this hunger to perform, and we have this hunger to create. So I wanted to explore the possibility of doing an actual production, but without an audience, that we could stream live on the internet. And the first challenge to that was finding a show that offered streaming rights, and that's limited. The number of shows is limited, and a show that was still good, and a show that we could do with. We needed to be able to have a small cast, something that we could stage fairly distanced, something that we could just fulfill all the safety precautions to try and put together. So we found Alabama Story, which is this wonderful play by Kenneth Jones, and he allowed us to have the rights to do a production of the show and to tape it and stream it. We spent the first 2 weeks of rehearsal by Zoom, and then we started to come together in limited numbers in the space, following all precautions, coming through and exiting certain doorways, sanitizing props, hand sanitizer everywhere, rehearsing in masks, the whole 9 yards. And then finally spending one day to tape the production. And we did it in a style so that it appeared stiff, so it was clearly on stage. I would say it's kind of like the way you'd see great performances on PBS. So we weren't trying to make a film. We were trying to show a presentation of the show on stage. And we actually just ran this the past 2 weeks, and it was a success for us, we feel like, especially for our first time doing it. We taped it, edited it, put it together, had it, we worked through a streaming service that hosted the video, and then through that I was able to link it to our website and everything and air it that way. It wasn't aired on YouTube or Facebook or anything like that. The author did not want it on those kind of platforms. So that's the quick version of that. Sorry. my takeaway advice, the one thing I think is probably really most important, and I think clearly from listening to everybody, you are all very authentic people, and I think that's the most important thing, is to be authentic. To be clear about why you're raising the money, what it's going to do. You can use buzzwords and those magic fundraiser words all you want, but if it doesn't come from something real, or if it does, people will stand behind you. So that's my main advice: be authentic.
Thank you, Reggie. Ekundayo, could you share some final thoughts as well?
Yeah, okay. I'll be as succinct as possible. I remember someone once telling me that the objective of a nonprofit is to put itself out of business. And so I think when you're fundraising during this time and even afterward, it is really to focus on that you're not selling a ticket, you're not selling a subscription, you're not asking people to contribute to a play, you're asking them to contribute to change. What your mission is about is changing something. If a person is not cultured, you're giving them music to change them. And your goal is to make certain that everyone within your purview is cultured. If you're a food bank, your mission is to make certain that everyone in your purview is fed. And so focus on your mission. And your performances and the concerts and all those things are a byproduct of that. And so I would ask you to focus on your mission and share that with individuals, and then ask them to contribute to the change that you're making.
Thank you so much. And James, we have about 1 minute left. What are your final thoughts?
I would say just remember to always look for the opportunity. Even in the midst of all this chaos, there is opportunity. There's the opportunity to reach new audiences, connect to new donors, get in front of people who've never heard of you before. There are even people who are becoming rich as a result of this. So we need to reach them so that they can become some of our new donors. But always look for the opportunity. Try it, try whatever, try something, because I think this is unprecedented. There's no wrong answers. Go for it. And, I can't wait to visit all of my new friends up here on the top of my screen once this all is over. I have lots of places to go in Tennessee now.
Thank you so much, James. And we look forward to your visit in Nashville for sure. So let us know. Hopefully this will be over sooner than later. But that is our panel for today. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. We appreciate you. I want to thank everyone who attended today. On behalf of the Arts and Business Council, I want to thank our sponsor, the Tennessee Arts Commission. I'm going to throw a link up into the chat for a survey, so you can tell us what you thought of today's panel and the discussion, and if there are any additional questions or topics that we should be thinking about covering. But for now, you can find that link in the chat, and thank you everyone so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.